Hi everyone, it's Caroline here, and today we're going to be talking about another one of the factors that comes up in medicine, the factor of science and technology. So there are actually two different factors. So science, scientific thinking, experiments, things like that, technology, new inventions, but they often get lumped together. So the factor of science and technology. So remember, there are seven factors that come up on the medicine course. So a factor is just a reason why things change. Why does medicine improve? Why does medicine get held back? And the seven the exam board want you to consider religion and superstition, communication, so how ideas are spread, warfare, science and technology, chance or luck, government, and the role of individuals. So individual scientists, individual doctors. So science and technology, in the Middle Ages, there's very, very little of it because religion has such a stronghold over the Middle Ages and over medicine. So people aren't being encouraged to go and do experiments. Remember, they feel very confident that they know what makes you sick, that you've angered God. They know how to get better. You need to pray to God. So they aren't encouraging a lot of science. And there is one piece of technology that comes out in the Middle Ages. It's a super important one. It's the printing press. So the printing press, you can see in the picture, it's a way of printing books so you don't have to handwrite them. So really, really important. All of a sudden, books are a lot cheaper. They can be made more quickly. It's accurate because people aren't making mistakes when they're hand copying them. So the printing press is really important, but not for the Middle Ages because it's invented in the 1440s in Germany. It only comes to England in the 1470s, and the Middle Ages period ends in 1500. So just be aware the exam boards really like to give you something that comes at the end of the time period, and they're just seeing if you know your dates. So they'll say something like the printing press was the most important invention in the Middle Ages. Okay, and then you need to be aware that yes, technically it comes in the Middle Ages, but really its impact isn't felt until the next time period. So science and technology in the Middle Ages, very, very small factor. The Renaissance, we do as human beings like 180-degree turn. So it's really interesting. In the Renaissance, we go from believing whatever is in a book. So if it's in a medical book, say by Galen, it must be true. To the exact opposite, where we want to see experiments, we want to try it for ourselves. And even people who are writing the books are being very open and like, don't take my word for it, just because I've said it in this book, go and look for yourselves. So the Renaissance is a real time when science, people really engage with it, they engage with experiments. So the fancy term for the new attitude is humanism. And all that simply means is a love of learning, that it suddenly becomes very fashionable to be educated, to know lots of things, to have read lots of books. So humanism, a love of learning. And how that impacts medicine is individuals are encouraging experimentation. So in their books, they're writing out the experiments they did and encouraging others to try it for themselves. And observation. So looking at the world around us rather than just sort of going, oh, well, it's like that because that's how God's made it. Actually observing the world around them. And a great example of this is the Royal Society. So this was like a club for people who liked science. So if you were rich and fancy, you liked science, you could go there, you could meet up other people who have similar interests. So they do astronomy, they do anatomy, they do all sorts of scientific branches, and they share ideas. So they talk about their experiments, they demonstrate them, people then go away and copy for themselves. So there's a real growth in the Renaissance of science, Science being fashionable, being interesting, being something people want to look at. So huge change from the Middle Ages there. And there is some technology which helps science. So microscopes, clocks, and thermometers all help out with those scientific experiments. So very first microscope comes at the end of this time period by Van Leeuwenhoek. Clocks, thermometers, all sorts of things you would use if you are a member of the Royal Society and you're doing one of their experiments. So technology that comes out that helps with the growth of science, but also some technology that helps with discoveries. So the picture I've drawn there is one of the very early fire engines. So in the Renaissance time, if you are unlucky enough to have your house catch fire, this is the kind of thing that will come and help you put it out. So early water pumps, and they give Harvey the idea that maybe the heart acts as a pump. So if you want an example of technology helping with discoveries, Harvey credits the pumps that come out in this time period for giving him the idea that that's what the heart does. And this idea just grows and grows now. So it starts in the Renaissance and we're just going to build on it. So industrial period, you get lots of great scientists doing great things. So Jenner discovers a vaccination on smallpox. So he's treating a milkmaid who has cowpox. He tells her she has cowpox. And she sort of makes this throwaway comment. She goes, oh, great, because now I won't get smallpox. And then Jenner, being a great scientist, is like, well, wait a minute, tell me more about this. And then she explains that it's this belief that all the milkmaids have, everyone who gets cowpox doesn't get smallpox. He develops his experiment. Now, his experiment is not great. So his experiment is on a small child that he will end up deliberately infecting with smallpox. Luckily for Jenna and that child, it works. Having cowpox first will stop you getting smallpox. So if you wanted to show off to the examiners, you could say they are doing scientific experiments, and you could just make a little mention that obviously Jenner's experiments on children wouldn't pass muster in the modern period. So we have a few more ethics involved in science. But thanks to Jenner and to James Phipps, that small boy, now smallpox is eradicated. You could also use Snow as a great example. So Snow has his hypothesis. He thinks that cholera must be spread in either water or food. He said it can't be spread in the air because it affects the stomach, not the lungs. So very sensibly, he's like, if you were just breathing it in, it would affect your lungs. And so he does his experiments all around cholera in Soho. He works out that everyone who has cholera is getting their water from the pump. He goes and asks the authorities to take the handle off the pump to prove it. So he has his hypothesis, he's putting it into practice, just like we would do with science experiments today. And then the really big one. So germ theory, 1861. So remember Louis Pasteur, he's not a doctor, he's not interested in medicine, he's a chemist, and he's trying to work out why wine goes bad. So he does lots of experiments and he works out its germs. So remember, Pasteur is just looking at how germs affect wine. He does make a link. He's like, well, maybe if germs make food go bad, maybe that's what makes people go bad. He kind of puts out the theory for other people to look at. But it's his experiments that prove that it's the germs that make food go bad. So three examples there, Jenner, Snow, Pasteur, of people doing scientific experiments that are going to move medicine on. And the technology is getting better here. So better microscopes. So glass has got better. The industry about making clear glass, the glass industry, has really upped their game. And they've got much, much clearer glass, which means better microscopes. And it's that helps Pasteur in his work. X-rays come in they come in 1895 with Röntgen. So just in the industrial period. So no real impact on this period. This is another example of one that only really has importance in the next period. But you can see there one of the first X-rays that they did on the screen there. So Röntgen discovers the X-rays, and the steel industry gets a lot better. So better steel tools that are used in surgery. So technology is really improving in the industrial period. The materials used to make things are improving, and that's really helping. And then the modern period and science. I mean, there is so much we could talk about. So a great example, penicillin. So Fleming kind of stumbles across it by accident, but Florey and Chain then come in and do so much scientific work. They manage to isolate penicillin, and then they have the struggle about how to sort of produce it in enough quantities to really help out. So penicillin is a great example of scientists working together. Transplants in modern period, so the work with heart transplants, liver transplants, face transplants, incredible some of the stuff they're doing. So there is so much we could talk about for this. So work on DNA is coming on really well. They're doing loads. So okay, with DNA, we don't know how to provide treatments or cures for genetic issues, but we're identifying them a lot more. And you can see there, this is a really famous picture. This is a mouse growing an ear on its back. So this is for patients who need um, ear transplant. So they're not going to be functional. It's more for a sort of cosmetic reasons. But you can see there, it's growing on the back of a mouse. So they can then remove it and put it onto the patient. So really some really important, huge things that were just unimaginable 150 years ago. So they come under the heading of big science. So doing things that 150 years ago, absolutely unimaginable. And along with it, the technology. So X-rays, lots of new technology coming about because of plastics and electricity. So an awful lot of new technology in plastic using electricity to work. You can see on the picture down there, that's a robot that is doing an operation. So robotics is now coming into surgery. So the technology, there's so much you could talk about. MRI scans, X-rays, there's dialysis machines, lots and lots of examples for the modern period. So in overview, from the Renaissance period, it's incredibly important as a factor. This would be quite an easy one to argue as the most important in any factor as long as it's not the Middle Ages. But what the exam board likes to do is they often like to separate it out into science versus technology, and they like to ask about which one's more important. Now, the good news is it's up to you. So you cannot get this wrong, whatever you say, as long as you can justify it. So it's sort of a chicken and the egg. You struggle to have one without the other. So you could say without the technology, scientists couldn't make their discoveries, they couldn't do their experiments. So without the microscope, Pasteur would never have discovered germs. Or you can twist it the other way and go, well, without science, the technology would just be there not doing anything. So you'd have a microscope, which is great, but you wouldn't have any discoveries because you wouldn't have the scientists there using it. So do you see how you can argue either way? None is right, none is wrong. It's up to you. It's just how well you justify it in the exam.